Hello, we are here with Marc Allen from Rehman. We're going to give ourselves just a little bit of time to let participants get joined in. Here, just 20, 30 seconds, and then we will introduce Marc and get started. Okay, I see we've got some of our participants joining, so we'll get going. Again, we want to thank Marc Allen from Rehman for joining us and answering our questions. Marc, welcome.
Morning. Good morning. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the offer and the opportunity here to meet with everyone today.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time and helping our community learn a little bit more about what we're going through, which is, as we all know, changing on a daily basis. To start, anything you want to just tell us about Rehman, the company, and what you all do?
Yeah, I mean, here at Rehman, you know, the big part that we've been doing here in the last couple weeks for sure, as far as everything ramping up here with, you know, tax compliance is our normal part of where we're at here, coming up on an April 15 deadline, which is definitely kind of changed over here in the last couple of weeks, where it's more now with the CARES Act and the Family First Coronavirus Response Act coming on board, trying to make sure we're fully there for our clients to help them through these difficult times. You know, we provide a wide variety of services, you know, from assurance to tax to financial planning, wealth management, kind of all over the board. Obviously, the big thing that we've been really bringing into play here this year is our HR consulting group, being able to come to the forefront and be there for clients as they're facing a lot of difficult decisions and everything else that we've been doing over this past 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll continue on here in the near future. Been having our main focus groups that we kind of meet every morning to talk about the changes and the daily changes in the environment, and excited to be here for clients to provide any information we can for them.
Well, and again, thank you for being here with us. The first question actually has to do with the CARES Act, which has several different types of grants. Can you discuss those types and how each works, and maybe just the key few things that they have going for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the CARES Act and some of the government resources that are available out there at this point, probably the big one that's on the forefront right now that everybody's kind of racing through is the Paycheck Protection Program. That first round of funding did run out last week on Thursday. They started applications back April 3rd for certain types of businesses, and then let self-employed individuals come into play on the 10th of April, but unfortunately, I think after less than 2 weeks, the first 349 billion that was allocated specifically for that was used up, and at this point, everybody's back at the table trying to get ready for round 2. That we continue to hear rumblings that should surface, you know, hopefully Wednesday or Thursday this week yet, possibly if everyone can come together and get everything straightened out, hopefully have another 250 billion that would kind of come into play for the specific Paycheck Protection Program, and then also on top of that some additional funding for healthcare and other areas as well. But that one, the key there is the loan forgiveness part, where instead of it just being a loan, being able to convert that over to a grant that's forgiven as long as you spend those dollars in set ways. So that's been a hot topic for us. We've been you know, racing to the finish line, trying to get as many clients and prospects on board to be able to apply for those Paycheck Protection Program loans, get those set up for them. And then now we're in the follow-up stage now, where we're starting to look at the loan forgiveness part. As they get those dollars, they have an 8-week spending time to use those dollars and make sure they're using them appropriately so they can convert those over to grants. Some of the other pieces that are out there, SBA debt relief program that was put in place for certain existing loans that for a 6-month period, SBA will pay principal and interest for certain loans. Economic injury, disaster loans is another piece that's out there. and that did provide some upfront advance funding of $10,000. That would have been, kind of looking at the various relief programs, making sure that you don't double dip on certain dollars and how you're spending those monies. So that may have to be worked with the Paycheck Protection Program loan, if you have to talk about what's forgiven and what's not forgiven, what converts over to a grant. But definitely we're here to help and provide any of those answers for you. And some of the other ones that they're going to be coming out in the future, some bigger loan programs that maybe the small businesses, this is where we're at today. Definitely going to be constantly changing for other opportunities in the future.
Yeah, it is definitely an ever-changing environment for us. The next question, there are a number of items in the Act that have tax implications. How will this be accounted for during the income tax guidance?
Yeah, so I think what you look at here when you're looking at the various tax pieces there that come into play, a lot of these grants, if it is a grant that is reducing, is helping you cover expenses, there's always going to be that circle area where you're going to come back to saying, okay, if it helped me pay for these expenses, therefore, are those expenses not deductible then in the future? Which is obviously going to have some sort of effect on your income tax in the future. So always something you want to keep in mind, where if you're having an expense that's being covered by a federal grant, odds are that expense is not going to be deductible for income tax purposes. Therefore, you're going to want to make sure you set aside some cash to worry about the tax consequences in the future as well.
Thank you. Next couple questions have to do with the FFCRA. The first question is, can you explain really what that is, what that stands for?
Yeah, so the FFCRA is the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, and that was kind of the first piece that was kicked out when we first started coming into play, be effective April 1st, and a lot of us were looking at, what is it out there that's available for families as they're dealing with everything with the coronavirus in the future, and added in some nice extended opportunities there to deal with some of the Extended Family Medical Leave Act that may come into play for certain individuals. You got extended sick pay Leave Act in there as well, in different items that are there for employees so that employers can, offer that time for them, but also be able to get some sort of funding back on the employer side too, to cover that time and extended leave for these individuals. So definitely that's where our HR consulting group came into play, really addressing some of the detailed situations on, as people start coming back to work. I think that's going to come into play here even in the near future, as you're looking at, who is on Extended Family Medical Leave Act and what are the reasons there. If families are affected by the coronavirus directly, whether that be them as an individual themselves or if they're taking care of another individual in the family, what programs are out there to help those employees feel comfortable that they can take the time away that they need to spend with their family and still be able to be compensated for some of those extended leaves.
And how do you apply for the FFCRA?
So there's nothing directly as far as applying for that. What that is the specific program that covers the various topics that are included in that area. So when we talk about that and you look at what's in there, it's effective as of April 1, 2020. Department of Labor's got some specific guidelines as far as what you can and can't do. But when it comes to the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, those are strict guidelines that are put in place, that there isn't an application for it, but it's opportunities there for their employees and the employers to be able to help work through some of these complicated issues that are going to arise in the near future.
Thank you. Next question. There are particular disclosure items that companies need to think about specific to the CARES Act. Can you explain?
Yeah, so when they talk about the specific disclosure items, I'd probably want to go into a little further detail and understand exactly, what we're looking at there. There's definitely a lot of opportunity that's provided in the act. But I think when you're looking at disclosures, if they're talking about bank disclosures specifically, I'd probably have to circle back and make sure I fully understand what that question was referring to. But definitely it's like we talked about tax implications. You want to make sure you're aware of the full situation. Understand, if I apply for a Paycheck Protection Program loan, what are the ultimate results from an income tax situation in the long term? So there's a lot of different areas probably to cover in there as well.
Thank you. Next question. When we talked a little bit about the PPP fund being basically out of money and the attempt to refund it, do you have any insight as to if and when that may happen?
We're hearing that it could be approved as early as Wednesday evening, going into Thursday this week. And, based on that, this is kind of our one and final chance to get it right. If you miss round one of the funding, this would, be round two, and we're not hearing really any discussions about the third round coming. So I would, encourage you that if you haven't, got your application at least into a bank and being discussing, the possibilities of where you stand with the bank. Hopefully you found out that you were fully funded and you've already received it. If you haven't, make sure you reach out to your bank. You're feeling comfortable where you are in the application process. Make sure that they can at least give you some sort of guidance saying, hey, you're in the queue. We've got through our internal underwriters. They've approved us. Now we're just waiting to, get final approval from the SBA. And if you're not at that point in the line and you're not ready, come tomorrow, it's probably going to be too late. I know there's, hundreds of thousands of applications out there right now that didn't make it through in the first pass, and the funds are going to be used up quick. Probably, less than 3 to 5 days would be my thought as far as how quick the dollars are going to go. So make sure you're thinking about that now. If you're not aware of everything, make sure you're talking to your CPA, talking to your banks. Help make sure you get in line and getting ready.
Thank you. This is more of an opinion question, but a good one. What should I do with money I have in my savings and retirement accounts? And how should we handle that through these ups and downs?
Yeah, and I'm not a wealth advisor, so I think that's the big thing there. I think some of us are looking at, where are we at in the stock market today? Obviously it's dropped. It's made some sort of, do you call it a market correction that was needed already, or where we're at long term? I'd definitely be hesitant right now based on where we're at. You're going to start seeing some more quarterly earnings from the bigger companies that are coming out, and everybody's struggling. So there's not like a clear crystal ball right now it's going to tell us, hey, this is the time to make investments or what to do with cash. But I think right now it's still, you got to be conservative. You got to make sure that you have enough to be able to provide for your family, take care of kind of the day-to-day opportunities that are ahead of us. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do have another drop in the market again. So it's kind of dropped, it came back a little bit, but I don't think we're out of this. So my opinion is, it's still a process, and my thought is we're still months away before you see anything as a real recovery, or seeing some of those signs where we're headed in the future.
Yeah, if we only had a crystal ball, right?
Right.
Couple of related questions I've kind of put together, and it has to do with the PPP loan and what you have to do to take that loan and change it into the grant, have it forgiven. Whether you have your employees on now or don't have your employees on, can you just bring us up to speed on kind of what the rules are with that?
Yeah, so I think we're getting into the loan forgiveness discussion now. So we've got clients and prospects that we're hearing, funding came in last Wednesday, started coming in this week. So once you get the funding, you've got an 8-week period to spend those dollars. And if you spend those dollars in the right buckets, and when we talk about those, we're talking about payroll costs. We're talking about employer provided health insurance, the employer provided portion of retirement contributions, state unemployment insurance. You've got some rent expense that you can include in there, utilities, mortgage interest, only the interest piece of those mortgage related payments. once you spend those dollars, as long as you're spending in those categories, you're able to convert it to a grant. So that's the big thing. So you're going to be working with your bank after you get those dollars, where you're going to be working through a process with them of proving those dollars and where you spent them. So you're going to be sending them probably receipts, payroll register, showing them, here we wrote payroll payments for the last week. So as they get those, they're going to be working with the SBA directly to convert those over to grants for you. So if it's a qualified expense and it meets the recommendations of the PPP loans, then you're going to convert it into a grant. Now that's the first test that you're kind of coming up against, is where did you spend the dollars? However, the second piece that we've got to look at is, as these loans were put together, the primary purpose there is to paycheck protection. So they want you to make sure you're spending the dollars on your employees, making sure you're getting the dollars back to them. So there's going to be some tests in there, and we haven't seen the final rules and regulations that are going to be put out there, but you're going to have to compare your full-time equivalents during your 8-week period, which means the number of employees you have employed, compared to prior time periods, so that if you spent, example, your loan's $100,000 and you spent $100,000, they're going to want to say, where did you spend the dollars? So now if we spent $100,000 and it was all in those qualified categories, great, we got the $100,000. However, it's going to have to be, roughly around 75% of that has got to be on your payroll costs. So did you spend it on payroll costs directly? So they're going to start looking at full-time equivalents, saying, hey, in the 2 time periods we've been comparing that to is January 1 through February 29th of 2020. And then also the other category that you can look at, or time frame, is February 15th through June 30th of 2019. You come up with your full-time equivalent calculation, and of those 2 amounts, that's the comparison that you need to do to say, what were my full-time equivalents compared to the 8 weeks now that I'm spending the money? So if your full-time equivalent is, you had 50 employees, and now your full-time equivalent in this next 8 weeks is you're only paying 25 employees, therefore you're going to already have a 50% reduction in the loan forgiveness amount. So that $100,000 that we spent, the loan forgiveness is already going to get reduced down to potentially $50,000 being forgiven instead of $100,000, because we didn't have the employees on board. And the third piece there is, when we look at full-time equivalent, there is, the way it's written right now is to help overcome that test. As long as you bring employees back before June 30th, there's a huge opportunity there to get your full-time equivalent number back up to 50 in our example there, going back up, from 25 employees back up to 50, as long as you bring them back on payroll by the end of June 30th. So you could get over your full-time equivalent calculation and get back closer to 100%. But then the third piece that they also look at is wage reductions. And if your wage reduction per employee, they kind of do a comparison and say, full-time wages were $100,000, but we only paid out $50,000, you're still back with another reduction on that loan forgiveness. So there's a lot of planning opportunity that you definitely should be, talking and looking at some cash flow projections and kind of where are we at, so that you can run, where are we at business wise and where are we at forgiveness wise. So you can kind of compare the two and look at those throughout the next 8 weeks and into the future. I mean, a lot of our cash flow projections that we run for clients, we're looking at a 13-week cash flow. So when you look 13 weeks out, you want to be able to make the best business decision, because the loan forgiveness part is not the only piece that you're going to look at. Obviously, down the road, when you study that and look at it, you've got, if it's not converted to a grant and forgiven, it becomes, a loan with a 2-year payback, 1% interest rate with deferred payments for up to 6 months. So there is some still, pretty good opportunities there, even if it ended up being a loan at the end.
Thank you. Next question. I am a self-employed farmer and feel forgotten. Any help or advice?
So I guess if you're looking there, self-employed, you are eligible to apply for the PPP loan as well. So if you haven't already, I'd make sure you're putting together your application, working with your bank, and getting in there. The big piece there is, what kind of, do you have payroll to do the loan calculation? Because the way they do the loans, it's 2.5 times your average monthly payroll. So if you've got payroll on there, then yeah, you can accumulate some there. But also if you had, profit over the years, you'd be able to show your net profits from 2019 would be an additional number there that you could put into the calculation to help be able to increase that loan amount. Then look at the loan forgiveness side on the back end and how that can help you. So I think you're definitely eligible. I would encourage you to get on the phone right after this and talk to your bank and find out how you get in line with the rest of us.
Thank you. Next question, do I have to pay taxes on my unemployment, both state and federal?
Yes, there will be taxes associated to the unemployment income. So definitely when you apply, I'm sure they'll give you opportunities to set up those withholding, just like you do for a W-2, asking you about your marital status, whether you're single, filing, had a household, how many dependents do you want to claim, and that's going to help you be able to put those income withholding amounts in place so that you're not finding surprises come next tax season.
Next question, what tax benefits has the state extended to small businesses?
So as far as the state coming out there, we do hear, small grants here and there as far as even local here in Jackson. We have the Dream Maker Fund, so there was definitely some grant opportunities there. There were some other small, state grant opportunities that were put out there by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. Unfortunately, the funding was not quite there as far as the demand, and I think we're seeing that across the board. So, there were definitely some opportunities out there. I think we're kind of past that at this point as far as what's available. Does that mean there'll be additional coming? I think depending on how long, we're affected, I'm sure there'll be some other opportunities that show up. Not just the state, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce put out an additional program that went live yesterday at 3 o'clock. And for an example there, they were taking up applications. If you had between 3 and 20 employers and you were in a zip code that was classified as a pandemic area, you were able to apply for a $5,000 grant. Not sure how many people were able to get through the system. Went live at 3. I know I hit the button a few times just to kind of test and see what was happening, but the website was continuing to crash over and over. But I heard by 8 o'clock last night they ran out of money. So those are just kind of the examples that are out there and the demand that's needed out there as far as right now looking at being able to get money to people in an immediate process. It's not an easy, smooth transition. So I would just continue to make sure you're listening and being on the main emails. If you see something, hopefully your CPA or attorneys or anything out there, banks are reaching out to you and giving you those opportunities, sending you links to let you know what opportunities are available for
you. Next question for you, Mark. Can you discuss the credit losses and troubled debt restructuring during these times?
Yeah, so I probably don't have the best background on that side as far as your financing and looking at what other opportunities are out there. Definitely we've talked about several of the grants and loan opportunities out there. There's going to be additional ones. There's definitely plenty of other opportunities coming. Tax-wise, there's going to be some opportunities out there for companies coming up in the near future. And when it comes to the credit losses and debt restructuring, probably best to let your bankers deal with that as far as the exact side. If you want to send me any emails with direct questions of kind of what you're looking at, I know our financing group would be happy to sit down and go through some of the situations there and kind of help you walk through the ways there. We do have our CFO services, that's what their specialty is, and they'd probably be better geared to get you some responses on that for sure.
Thank you. Couple questions for individuals that I'll kind of wrap up. And essentially, we have folks at home, they're all of a sudden unemployed or furloughed. They're receiving their unemployment, but still maybe not enough, or the future, they're looking for other help or other needs. Do you have any advice? Are there any tax relief programs for individuals or individual type loans or things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the big thing for the individuals that came out through the CARES Act was your stimulus package, where the $1,200 per individual stimulus checks that were coming out, some additional $500 for each qualifying child. So those were probably the biggest things that came out for the individuals, and I think there's still a known issue getting the dollars in individuals' hands. They're working through those processes at this point. So that's probably one of the biggest items that came out for individuals. You know, when you go through the notes and you're focused on, you know, where we're at today, obviously a lot of it sounds like, you know, the businesses and where we're at on that side. You know, obviously unemployment, there was a huge, you know, piece that was put into unemployment. So for individuals that unfortunately have been, you know, reduction in the workforce due to, you know, everything going on, there's been the additional $600 added to unemployment benefits that's been extended, you know, through July. So there's definitely some additional wages there, and that's even put, you know, some businesses in situations where, you know, the unemployment amount that they're receiving with the additional $600 on top of that is more than what they were getting paid when they were working. And it's hard for, you know, that balance of, you know, businesses as they're starting to talk about bringing workforces back on board. You know, how do you get those employees to come off unemployment and be interested in taking a pay reduction to come back? So I think those are more additional discussions that are going to be needed, and you know, looking at opportunities and talking through some of that. We've even been talking about on the PPP loans that, you know, as you have to spend the dollars in that 8-week period, it might be an opportunity where you might have to pay those employees more than what you normally would, just so that it helps cover that gap of maybe their normal pay compared to what they're getting paid on current unemployment. So there were some opportunities there for individuals to get some dollars in their pockets, to keep the additional pay going through. But you know, that's kind of where it's at today. And I think the biggest thing that you're looking at is getting the help at the businesses so that these small businesses can get their employees back to work and continue to move through everything else that we're facing on a day to day. And we're definitely all in it together. You know, you hear about pay cuts, you hear about workforce reductions. It continues to happen. A lot of companies making tough decisions that, you know, I think we're all hoping for the best and hoping that, you know, in the near future things change and start, you know, turning around. But it's once again, we're all in here together, but that crystal ball isn't there to tell us when. So.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Last question we have. How do you recommend small businesses decide what to do to stay alive? And I guess just looking for any other advice from your perspective, because as we know, we're all in it together, and it's very tough times, and a lot of people and businesses are just hanging on. So anything on that?
Yeah, and you know, I think where you're at today, you're looking at what opportunities are out there, what funding, and making sure you're fully taking advantage of it. Because if you're the one that's, you know, kind of waiting for something to come your way, there's such a demand on some of these funding programs that are out there that you really have to, you know, be that one that's the squeaky wheel all the time, making sure you're out there searching for those opportunities, continuing to, you know, hound your bank and ask your bank, what's the status on my, you know, loan that's here. You've got some, you know, deferral options on payments. So there's definitely some options out there. And, you know, for the small businesses, it's continuing to, you know, fight through all of that. And obviously, if you're able to get some of this funding that's available for an 8-week period of time, it at least helps you bridge that gap where you're, you know, hoping a couple months down the road that things are turning around. But it's not going to be easy. It's going to be some tough decisions for everyone. And you know, the ultimate thought is you know, continue to grind and get through that, you know, piece by piece. You know, obviously anything that's out there for some of these funding opportunities, and you can convert those into grants or be it forgiven. You know, that's the primary focus we're at today with our small business clients. You know, really looking at what can we do to help them out today. And, you know, when I said about tax compliance going from April 15th deadline out to a July 15th deadline, you know, I quit doing, you know, tax compliance really the last 3-4 weeks because it was a massive flip just to the small businesses and making sure that, you know, the future of them is what we're concerned about, and you know, longevity for them and their future. That's what matters. So that's the biggest thing I'd say out there, just making sure you're looking for the opportunities that are out there and taking full advantage of those. The next step will be, hey, if you weren't eligible for a PPP loan or weren't able to get funding, there's other tax credits out there, the employee retention credit, some other credit opportunities that are available, that, you know, that's the next round where we're going to be going to clients saying, hey, unfortunately, we weren't able to get this loan, but what is the next tax opportunity out there for you? Some of the other things, net operating losses for businesses, those they've kind of made those where you can now carry those back for 5 years. So there's some opportunities there to bring some cash flow back to companies to help in the time frame now where you're looking for the cash. You know, if you can take it back even further, where tax rates were at a higher rate in the past, and do a 5-year carryback, you're going to get a permanent tax savings, not just a temporary cash benefit, but you might actually save some monies long term. So if you can accelerate some of those losses and be able to get a quick refund filed as soon as possible to help generate that cash, to help you survive on a daily basis, you know, that's what we're looking for. We're here for you to help with anything we can do, for sure.
Well, thank you, Marc. We really appreciate your time and the insightfulness on answering the questions. Any last remarks?
No, I mean, I think that explains it. You know, as Rehman, we're one of those firms that, you know, we're here for our clients, you know, delivering the business and, you know, that type of work that we support on a daily basis is very important to us. So the individuals, business clients, prospects, everybody, we want to make sure you understand that we're here for you. If you need anything, we've got a, you know, wide variety of experts in various areas to help along the way. And as everybody's starting to roll out, you know, and go back to work and start bringing some employees back, you know, the HR consulting field is going to continue to get bigger and bigger. And if you don't have the resources to handle some of that, you know, updates and changes and programs that are going to be out there, make sure you reach out to your CPAs and consultants out there to get that answers you need to help make the decisions and you know, reemploy the workforce as you can. So
Well, thank you, Marc, and thank you, Rehman, for doing this for us. And as he said, if you have questions, please reach out to your Jackson chamber, and we are here for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.